Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Martijn Andrea, and today I chair the Planning Committee, which consists of 9 elected borough councillors supported by a range of professional officers. It is the committee's responsibility to determine a planning application using current national and local planning policies and other relevant planning considerations. In the process, firstly, the planning officer will present the application, and then only those speakers who have registered to speak will be invited to address the committee with a strict time limit of 3 minutes. Once the presentations have been made, the committee will discuss and debate the application, seeking clarifications from the Council's professional planning officers where necessary. We can only focus on the proposal before us and only take into account what are considered material planning considerations. We welcome members from the public to attend these meetings. And I would like to point out that members of the public, either supporters or objectors to the application, are not permitted to address the committee outside of the allocated public speaking section for each item, or to ask questions, interject, or clap during the meeting. Planning proposals can often generate strong opinions, both for and against the development. But the committee needs to be conducted in a professional and orderly manner without interruption from the public gallery. As a chair, if there is a disturbance from the public gallery in accordance with point 5.25 of the Council Constitution, I have the discretion, if needed, to take a number of steps, including, but not limited to, removal individuals from the meeting and clear parts of the gallery. Thank you. Madeleine, can we go to the first item? Any apologies? No apologies? The minutes of the previous meeting. Has everybody seen them? Anybody wants to nominate Wayne? Thank you. Any seconder? Carol? Are we all in favor of the meeting? Minutes of the meeting. Thank you. Then we move to declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? Caroline.
Thank you. Prior to joining the Council's Planning Committee, I sat on the Early Town Council Planning Committee when determining their consultation response on agenda item 13, application number 250148 Liberty House. On this particular occasion, it would not be appropriate for me to take part in this item, and I shall be withdrawing from the committee and leaving the room for its duration. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Any other declarations of interest? If not, then we move to the first item, which is Hogwood Farm on Shearlands Road. And Nick, you will give a presentation, and then Mr. Richards will present on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. 3 applications are presented this evening in parallel. Firstly, a full application for the erection of 48 dwellings. Secondly, a reserve matters application comprising details of sports facilities, allotments, play areas and public open space. And thirdly, a section 96A application for a minor non-material amendment to the outline planning permission for Finchwood Park or Hogwood Farm. Shown here are 2 views of the site. The first is taken from an elevated position just inside the northern boundary, looking to the southeast. Newly constructed properties within Carla's parcel P15 are visible to the far left-hand side of the image. The second photo is taken from the same vantage point, but looking southwest over land that is being proposed for a sports hub. The site is well contained within its setting, and there is limited intervisibility beyond the site boundaries. Some members of the committee will already be familiar with the Arborfield Strategic Development Location, or SDL. Both halves of the SDL area, that's Arborfield Green to the north and Finchwood Park to the south, benefit from outline planning permissions totalling 3,500 dwellings. And together these establish the principle of development across the SDL. Development commenced in 2016 and is now well underway. The three applications for consideration this evening are interlinked. The site location is shown here with a red dashed line. The larger image shows the site within Finchwood Park and the smaller within the wider SDL. Outline planning permission for Finchwood Park was issued in 2018 and envisaged that sports facilities and allotments would come forward in this location. Under the terms of the existing Section 106 legal agreement, default responsibility to fund and deliver these facilities falls to the Council. The plan here illustrates a change proposed to the Outline Planning Permission under Section 96A. This would provide flexibility to utilise the white area for a different form of development as shown on the following slides. The site layout for both applications are shown here on one combined plan. That's within the red line boundary for the full application and within the yellow line boundary for the Reserve Matters application. The full application seeks detailed approval for 48 homes on this land and would be in addition to the 1,500 previously approved under the Finchwood Park consent. The residential component is considered to have the appearance of a natural extension to the SDL, respects its landscape setting, and does not conflict with the Council's policy requirement to maintain settlement separation. No significant negative impact on the amenity of existing or future residents has been identified. The layout overall makes efficient use of both sites such that 48 additional homes could be delivered on part of the original allocation without compromising the ability to deliver a high-quality sports hub and allotment site, albeit within a reduced area. A separate Reserve Matters application seeks approval for sports pitches, a pavilion, allotments, play facilities, bridleway and public open space on adjacent land. The new homes would facilitate delivery of these facilities by the developer, allowing them to come forward earlier than would otherwise be possible. Under proposed Section 106 heads of terms, responsibility to fund and deliver would transfer from the Council to the developer. Both the full and Reserve Matters application benefit from pre-application engagement. The sports hub and allotment designs having been co-designed by officers and specifically tailored to the Council's operational requirements. The residential design would continue the approach taken within the adjacent parcel. Access would be taken from Fieldfair Lane, which in turn provides a through route to the sports hub car park and pavilion. A lower density of 22 dwellings per hectare and soft landscaping would be commensurate with the edge of settlement character. A mixture of 2, 3 and 4 bedroom dwellings are specified, all of which are proposed as market homes. The application is accompanied by a viability assessment which demonstrates that affordable housing cannot be accommodated. This is due to the significant cost of providing the sports hub and allotment infrastructure. Viability has been independently validated by a specialist consultant instructed by the Planning Authority. Although unfortunate, in this instance the benefits of the application are considered to outweigh the inability to deliver affordable housing on this particular parcel. It is, however, recommended that the Section 106 include a review mechanism to confirm that the viability position has not changed at the point of delivery. A sports hub, including pavilion, is proposed to the west of the residential site and would act as a focal point for visitors. The building would be accessed from the east via a car parking area. Plans have been designed in consultation with officers and are considered appropriate for the emerging context. The pavilion serves 2 full-size adult pitches, one 3G floodlit and another grass. An informal kickabout area lies to the far south. The pitch and pavilion design accord with Sport England standards. A large play area is specified to the immediate north of the pavilion. A BMX track, equipped playground, landscaped area for play and trim trail are proposed. The play hub forms part of the original package of infrastructure to be delivered by the developer and therefore fulfills existing Section 106 requirements. The allotment facility is well equipped and includes sheds, picnic benches and taps. A developer contribution would also be secured to the future installation of photovoltaic panels. Finchamstead Parish Council, who would operate the allotments on completion, have been consulted on and are supportive of the proposals. So in conclusion, the applications include notable benefits that weigh in their favour. There are also factors that weigh negatively in the planning balance, including conflict with the spatial vision of the development plan and localised landscape impact. However, these are largely mitigated through the site layout itself and proposed landscaping. The development would have the appearance of a natural extension to the SDL and does not meaningfully erode settlement separation. Whilst the residential component would not include any affordable housing, the overall package outlined within the heads of terms is considered reasonable. The adverse impact of the development would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against all relevant policies. As such, the 3 applications are recommended for approval, subject to conditions and the completion of legal agreements. 3 separate officer recommendations, that's one for each of the applications, are summarised here and also set out in full on pages 9 to 14 of the committee report.
Thank you, Nick. Could I now ask Mr. Richards to present? You have 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the committee. My name is John Richards. I'm the Land and Planning Director for Carla Homes Thames, who are the applicant for the planning applications you're considering this evening. Many of you will be familiar with the Hogwood Farm site, which was granted outline planning permission in 2017 for a mixed-use development including 1,500 new homes, alongside community facilities including sports pitches, allotments and play areas. Whilst the delivery of new homes is of course of utmost importance, Carla has always recognised the value of delivering key infrastructure at the earliest opportunity, and members will recall us working alongside officers to ensure the early delivery of the 9 Mile Ride extension and the 29 hectares Sang, both of which are now fully open. We've also recently received Reserve Matters consent for the neighbourhood centre, which will begin construction later this year. Finchwood Park is now home to an ever-growing population of new residents. We want to ensure that the community facilities to serve these residents are delivered at the earliest opportunity. These applications therefore seek the early delivery of new pitch provision, including a full-size grass football pitch, as well as a 3G pitch and informal kickabout areas, a high-quality new pavilion building to be operated by the council, and including changing facilities and a club room, play areas for a range of different ages, including a BMX track, a large dedicated car park, including space for coach parking to serve these new sport and leisure facilities, and 83 allotment pitches alongside their own car parking provision, tool sheds, water troughs and composting facilities. As recognised in the committee report, these facilities were originally intended to be directly delivered by the council using SIL receipt. However, this money is no longer immediately available, and Carla, rather than accepting these facilities may be delayed, have proactively worked alongside the council and parish councils to fund their delivery through additional housing. These new facilities, directly delivered and funded by Carla, would supplement the existing infrastructure directly delivered to date on the site, which includes 382 affordable homes and SIL payments in excess of £26 million. The early delivery of these facilities would be enabled by the construction of an additional 48 high-quality homes. These have been carefully designed to form a natural extension to parcels 14 and 15 and would blend seamlessly with the existing development. They also meet the highest standards of sustainability, being gas-free, timber frame and incorporating urban wildlife features, including achieving 10% biodiversity net gain. We hope members will concur with the officer recommendation to grant planning permission and support these applications, allowing Carla to continue working in partnership with the council to ensure the delivery of high-quality community infrastructure at the earliest opportunity within this vibrant new community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Okay. I suppose everybody has read the report. Does anybody have any clarifying questions for Nick or for the other officers at this stage? Moses.
So what do you mean by gas-free?
Gas.
So what does it use? Is it cleaner than gas?
I think I can answer this one, Moses. So essentially means that the new homes will be heated with air source heat pumps, so they won't have gas boilers. So it will be powered by electric only rather than any gas going into the house itself.
Caroline?
Entrance to the allotments, is there a lockable gate that they need? Sorry, because I can see the plan, the allotments, but I just wonder if there's a gate that's lockable for security reasons.
Yes, there will be a gate to the allotments that will be secure.
Wayne, go ahead.
So just for clarity in the backstory, listening to the land director there, so it was our job to build the sports facilities, etc., etc., etc. We no longer, well, there was no longer enough money to do that. So Carla come up with a proposal that if we build another 48 houses, we'll do it for you. Is that the backstory?
Yes.
Yeah, I think looking at this application, I think a lot of the sort of community support from the sort of parishes, it seems it's actually based on this sports facility being delivered and the allotments being delivered. Are there any sort of, you know, guarantees or things we can put in place to sort of mandate that actually has to be delivered and there's no last minute kind of sweep of a rug that, you know, it's no longer viable, because I think that would change things.
Yes, absolutely. So were planning permission to be granted, it would be subject to a Section 106 agreement and a modification to the original Section 106 agreement for Finchwood Park as well. And that would include triggers, which essentially mean that the sports facilities have to be delivered hand in hand with the residential development. The residential development won't be able to be fully occupied until the sports facilities are in place. So we do have that guarantee that it will come. Just pragmatically speaking as well, Carla are on site at the moment, and economically it just makes a lot of sense for them to be working on both projects at the same time using the same compound, so that the two do naturally go hand in hand. But we do have that assurance that it will definitely be delivered as promised.
Any more questions? I just want to recap then, I suppose. Nick pointed out the principle of development, that this is the houses will be outside the area that were initially earmarked for residential development, but it's still within the existing strategic development location. It will maintain the separation with Barkham and Finch Hampstead. Actually, you know, building the allotments and the football pitch will form a permanent barrier. Infrastructure, maybe the physical area for sports, and that would be reduced below normally our standards for a given wider SDL population. But the shortfall is partially mitigated through efficiencies in layout and design quality. Parking, there was no objections. Ecology, we have a 10% biodiversity gain through an offset SANG improvement. Flooding and drainage, there was no objections. There are no affordable housing in this scheme, but this scheme would allow acceleration of the sports and leisure facilities to support the community. And for the housing mix, it's sort of balanced out across the SDL. In addition, there are NHS contributions and a bus contribution. Do I have someone who wants to propose? Oh, go ahead.
I don't think we've got any choice, because if we don't approve this, they won't get their sports facilities. So what choice have we got?
Well, it's you can vote for it or against it, I suppose.
But you see my point. You know, they've got to have the facilities that they signed up to when they buy these houses, so we've got no choice.
Well, we have a choice, but I think this choice would allow acceleration of the part. Yeah.
Acceleration.
Okay, we have to approve all three different applications at the same time. Could I have a proposal for the recommendations for the first application, which is
So Martin, if we could do them one at a time.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
recommendation 1 first, followed by 2 and 3.
the first one is for the which is for the development of the houses. Carol,
Thank you. I'd like to propose we support the officer recommendation of conditional approval on item or planning application 242653.
thank you. Do I have a seconder? Caroline, thank you. Could we have a vote for this one? Thank you all. Could we then move to the next application, which is 242696, which is for the, Carol?
Thank you. I propose that we support the officer recommendation for application 242696 for conditional approval.
Do I have a seconder? Catherine, thank you. Could we have a vote? Thank you all. And then for the final one, which is 242811, which is more of a combination of the both, you understand?
Me again. Could I propose that we accept the officer recommendation of conditional approval on item 242811?
Do I have a seconder? Wayne, thank you. Could I have a vote? Thank you. Then we move to the next application, which is Liberty House on Early.
Chair, if you just give us 1 minute.
Yeah, we'll just give us 1 minute, and Caroline has left the room. Mark, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a full planning permission for the erection of 3 two-storey buildings, each comprising of 6 apartments, together with associated ancillary development, hard-standing, landscaping and footpaths. I'll just give a brief presentation and a brief summary, and then I'll pass it over back to the committee. So this is an aerial photo of the site. You can see the existing building in the red circle there is Liberty House, which is already a block of flats, and the parcel of land next to it is where the application site is. The road to the north is Strand Way. There's actually a footpath and cycle path to the south called Cutbush Lane. So this is just the red line plan, just showing the site in a bit more context, again with Liberty House and Strand Way and the surrounding properties. This is the proposed site plan. You can see there would be 2 access points onto Strand Way. You can see there'd be 3 blocks in total with 6 units each. There'd be a small cut through to Cutbush Lane, and you can make out Liberty House there, and also the other properties along Strand Way and how they sort of sit in with the general building line and grain of development. So this is building A, a 2-storey building with a hipped roof. In terms of vernacular, it's sort of fairly suburban, late 20th century, and all the buildings are relatively similar in terms of how they look. This is building B, the middle one, and on to building C here. So these are just a couple of street scenes, just showing the building in context with Liberty House and the surrounding properties. The one at the bottom, which is basically would be from Strand Way, if you had a chance to see a section. So you can just see how it fits in with the existing properties and also Liberty House to the right there. And this is just a more a sort of, I guess, artist sketch of it and how it fits in with the surrounding area. Just moving on to some photos. So starting with the top left, so we've got Strand Way looking west. So you can see that open parcel of land is where the application site would be, and you can see Liberty House there beyond. Moving to the top right, this is on Strand Way looking the other way, and you can see the houses that the development would sit next to. And bottom left, Strand Way again. This is directly outside one of the access points, so you can just see where it'd be there. And this is Strand Way at the bottom right, looking west again. It's just a bit more of a zoomed out picture. You can see the application, the opening application site there with Liberty House. And starting top left, this is Strand Way to the east again, and you can just see the neighbouring property there. And the photographs on the right is just Cutbush Lane, so this is where the cycle and footpath is, and there would be an access point onto here as well. So just to conclude, Chairman, I'll just take the slides off and then I'll give a few summary points. There you go. So just in summary, this is for 18 affordable units, and obviously this is a significant benefit of the scheme. It's within a major settlement, so it's a very sustainable location where this sort of development should be. As members would have probably noticed, there is a very recent previous approval which only expired about 3 or 4 weeks ago, actually. So there's been no change in policy that would warrant a different conclusion to what was agreed previously. Even if we'd done a flat planning balance, it would comply with the development plan as a whole. Even factoring the tilted balance, there'd be no detrimental harm that would outweigh the benefits. So to conclude, Chairman, it's recommended for approval subject to a Section 106, which would secure an employment skills plan and the 100% affordable housing on site, and also the conditions recommended as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We now have asked Councillor David, Ward Member. You have 3 minutes, David.
I welcome affordable housing. My concern is about street parking and narrow, winding residential road. We were told when the change of use was proposed that no one would park on the road outside Liberty House, which is next door. Yet the road outside the flats is full of residents' cars. The residents of the flats, that is. This makes the road dangerous now. I've asked repetitively for these cars or vans to be parked in the car park, to no avail. As I'm sure you can see, the existing bend, and the picture wasn't very good, I'm afraid, the existing bend near the proposed site already experiences limited visibility. Increased traffic and on-road parking from the new development will exacerbate safety risks. Planning Policy 3 indicates that local circumstances should be considered when setting standards and agreeing development. It gives further advice that proposed development should lead to the provision of car parking space that is well integrated with a high-quality public realm and streets that are pedestrian, cycle and vehicle friendly. As PPS 3 states, it's imperative that we maintain clear sightlines for drivers, while also ensuring safety for pedestrians, cyclists and emergency vehicles. This will not apply in Strand Way. Looking at Wokem's parking guide, there are many statements of intent. One of these, proposed for every new development, is to provide an appropriate level of parking for residents and visitors. Yet in this development, there aren't even enough spaces for the residents. Likewise, another statement of intent says, all new housing to be built with appropriate parking facilities as determined in the Council's planning policies. I'm afraid these statements of intent are not being met. When there is not even any parking in front of one of the block of flats, there aren't enough spaces for all the residents, so there must be an objection. I believe that we can do better than this. Yes, allow the necessary affordable housing, but also allow local residents to travel safely to their accommodation, especially as there is room for more parking on the site. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you, David. Wayne, go ahead.
Mark, could you just tell me the difference between the previous application that's only just run out and this application? Is there any difference?
No, it's the same plans.
Right. Well, that's your answer then. And you've commented, you've said that there's highways, no objection. And I presume yours was no objection to the previous application?
Correct.
Mark, can I just ask you then to comment on the parking? That's the issue that Councillor Hare raised.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so as the member correctly identified, it's the same plans as previously. In terms of the parking, so the parking standards are in the back of our MDD local plan, and in this case we'd expect 0.5 to 0.7 spaces per unit because it's unallocated, so that equates to 10 spaces. So it's over and above that. I appreciate what the residents said about the existing situation at Liberty House. However, that shouldn't preclude us for permitting a scheme which is in policy now. It was originally built as a nursing home in the 1990s and then later changed, I think, around 2019. So there's perhaps a bit of a hangover from when it was originally built in the 90s in terms of that. But in terms of the scheme before the members, that has an over-provision of parking against our standards. In terms of, I think it was a comment about the quality of the road and the sight lines, and it was quite narrow. Strandway is a cul-de-sac. It's not a free route, so my experience is vehicle speeds are quite low around there. And there was no objection previously on sight lines because of that and where they were. So overall, we you know, at the time it was considered acceptable, and like I say, there's been no change that would really warrant any difference.
Thank you, Mark. Moses.
I wasn't here in 2022, but I do know Strandway very well. I go there at least once or twice a week because I have people that live at Liberty House. I'm inclined to agree with David Hare because the traffic there, parking on street parking is quite hazardous. So I don't know what would have changed I don't know what the traffic situation was like in 2022, but it's definitely not good now.
The only comment I have, Moses, is to re-emphasize that for this application on its own, it has allowed 18 parking spaces, which is sufficient for this part alone, but this might not solve potential issues, the historical issues, but it's on its own, it should address the parking for this specific development. And I noticed there were no objections from highways on this. But yeah, your point is noted.
Thank you, councillors. I'm not minded to change our position. The council does have parking standards. The application complies with those. I appreciate that on-street parking occurs. If you were minded to do so, it would be possible to ask the applicant to introduce some parking controls to prevent on-street parking in the worst locations. There is, of course, a risk that by removing those cars, people would go faster and you'd end up with less suitable parking. I think it's a very careful balance, and I think we take the view that there's not a significant material change from the previous consent, and therefore the officer's recommendation is as it is.
Thank you. Sam?
Yeah, a couple of things. I think I want to echo, what was mentioned earlier. I think, page 90, application 213457, right? this the same. There's no material difference in the application that was approved on the 7th of June 2022. So you know, you can say yes to that. I think you can't refuse this. I think also just it's nice to see 100% sort of affordable housing development. I have to say, in this borough, sitting on this committee with all of you, the amount of times we put through sort of 4-bedroom homes that maybe not people that inside a borough can't afford. I think this is, you know, a number of young families will be lining up to take this. So it's nice to see more affordable homes like this coming into the borough.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions, comments at this stage? So just to recap, basically the principle of development is acceptable. It's an infill development. It's within the major development locations. It's, as Sam Rain said, it's a renewal of a previous application. It's compatible with the character of the area. As Sam has mentioned, it brings 100% affordable housing, which is very recommendable. There's no dominance of overbearing. Access, we discussed, it has provided 18 car park spaces. And so for this particular development, there's no overflow expected. There's also parking for cycles. There's no objections from highways. Drainage, there was an objection from the drainage officer, but I think that has been addressed by condition 7. And also no objections from the tree officers. Is anybody wants to propose?
I'm happy to do that. In view of the fact that it is just a replica of the previous application, we have no choice, I don't believe, and it's not the job of a new application to solve existing parking problems. So with that, I'd like to propose that we support the planning officer's recommendation of conditional approval on this plan.
Do I have a seconder? Wayne, thank you. Could I have a vote on that? Everybody except Moses? Okay. Any objections?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining from Moses. Thank you. Moses. Appreciate it. Thank you. Are we ready to move to the next application, which is land north of School Road and Arborfield Cross? Joanna, are you ready to give your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. This is application 230735. Sorry, I think I got the number wrong. 250735, which seeks outline planning permission for residential development of up to 70 dwellings, together with associated access, landscaping, open space, and associated works. All matters are reserved except for means of access. May I bring members' attention to the update paper, where it is listed that additional 6 representations have been received following the publication of the agenda. The Council received reports of presence of badgers within the site. The ecological assessment, which accompanied the application, incorporated results of the site species-specific survey. which included searches for signs of badger activity and search for badger sets. It is recognized that fauna present within the site, depending on cropping regime, had some potential to support badgers. The Council is aware of locations of badger sets in the area and consider that the proposal would not result in fragmentation of their foraging habitats, in particular given the green infrastructure provision around the perimeter of the site or impact on significant sets. There is a summary of other representations received, as well as references to the sections within the committee report that address these points made. Arborfield and Newland Parish Council responded to officer comments made on the application, and the copy of this is available on planning website. The additional update relates to biodiversity net gain. The statutory requirement for biodiversity net gain, BNG, is 10%. Since the submission of the agenda, the applicant committed to the delivery of 20% of BNG on site, which would be secured by condition, and so additional condition 34 refers. There is one amendment to condition number 1, where in part B, there is a change to the number of years within the reserved matters needs to be submitted to comply with the legislation. That is 3 years. And the other amendment is the addition of a new condition to secure the biodiversity net gain. That's condition 34. Right, so the application site is agricultural land located in the countryside, outside development limits, immediately adjacent to the settlement boundary of Arborfield Cross limited development location. This application follows the refusal of a previous scheme for 95 dwellings on a larger site. The key constraints include its location within the Burwood and Barkham valued landscape, the designation of School Road as a green route, and its relationship with Arborfield Cross village. Please bear with me whilst I flick through the slides to the right one. I think we're nearly there. There we go. This slide shows the location of the site in a wider context. The site is identified with a red line. As members will be aware, the previously refused application included a field to the west, shown with a blue line. To the southeast, we have Arborfield Cross village. Barkham lies further to the northeast of the site. To the south, shown in a yellow outline, is the Arborfield Garrison SDO, Strategic Development Location. The site access would be off School Road, which is now close to the through traffic in this location, approximately over here. Local services such as the shop, branch of Swallowfield Medical Practice, post office and several bus stops are located on Eversley Road, shown over here. Here we have a couple of slides containing views as follows. For each photo there is a drawing showing approximately where these photos were taken and in which direction. I hope that's visible. So here we have views from the bottom of School Road, over here, towards west in the top left corner. The bottom right photo here shows views from the top of School Road looking east towards the proposed access point. Here we have views from the top of Cole Lane looking northeast in the top left corner. And here we have views from Cole Lane towards the site. This slide shows views from the northeast corner of the site towards the Coombs School, with belt of vegetation separating the school from the application site. It's over here. And this final slide shows views of the field boundary to the east, where the proposed access road would be located. The application is supported by a parameters plan, which establishes the maxima for the scheme. And so we have the developable area within the center of the site shown in beige. This would measure 3.21 hectares or 58% of the site area. Vegetation that would be retained is shown in dark green, and it encompasses vegetation around the perimeter of the site. Vegetation to be removed to create access points is limited to areas shown in red. The remaining area would comprise green infrastructure and would measure 2.31 hectares or 32% of the site. Green infrastructure would be also located within the heart of the parcel and around its boundaries. This slide shows one of the potential layouts within parameters shown in the previous slide. This illustrative master plan demonstrates that the proposal is capable of accommodating the proposed quantum of development, whilst achieving the Council's recommended distances in terms of the external amenity space and separation. Consistent with parameters, the area of green infrastructure would comprise walking routes around the perimeter of the site to the east, north and west. The master plan demonstrates how the main spine road would read as the primary street with larger dwellings setbacks along it. This in turn would allow for sufficient space to be provided for a footpath, which would be separated from the street by structural tree planting. The illustrative layout incorporates a range of road types, including tertiary streets types and shared surfaces, which demonstrates that a scheme would be able to deliver legible development. The area of green infrastructure within the center of the site would incorporate a communal open space, as well as a play area, which would provide a focal point of the development. Whilst the master plan is only illustrative, it demonstrates that the scheme would be capable of delivering the proposed quantum whilst adhering to good design principles to achieve high-quality scheme. This slide shows a computer-generated image of the development as shown on the illustrative master plan. The central issue for this application is the planning balance. The proposal conflicts with the development plan's spatial strategy, which seeks to limit development in the countryside. However, the Council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of deliverable housing sites, with the latest published position being 1.7-year supply. Consequently, the tilted balance, as set out in paragraph 11D of the NPPF, is engaged. This means that planning permission must be granted unless the adverse impacts of the scheme would significantly and demonstrably outweigh its benefits. In assessing the scheme, officers have identified clear environmental harms. These have been afforded a significant weight against the proposal, and they are harm to the Burwood and Barkham valued landscape, harm to the character of School Road, which is designated as a green route, and harm to the setting of Arborfield Cross Village. A conflict with the Council's spatial strategy, by virtue of proposal being sited within countryside, is also recognised, and this is afforded moderate weight. The site, being in a suboptimal location in sustainability terms, would result in a degree of reliance on private cars. This harm is recognised and afforded moderate weight. Officers also acknowledge the proposal would result in a loss of approximately 1 hectare of grade 3A best and most versatile agricultural land. And given the relatively small amount of BMVL to be lost, this harm is given limited weight. Limited weight is also afforded to the conflict of the scheme with the emerging local plan. Whilst the proposal would result in harms outlined above, paragraph 11D of the NPPF requires that permission be refused only where these harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh its benefits, having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, and providing affordable homes, individually or in combination. In undertaking this balancing exercise, officers consider the benefits which the scheme would deliver, as the NPPF explicitly requires the harms to be weighted against these benefits. And so we have the benefits of provision of housing, which is afforded significant weight. Similarly, the provision of affordable housing on site also attracts significant weight. As members will note, the update paper includes an additional condition 34, which secures the commitment to delivery of 20% of BNG on site, which is double the mandatory requirement. This benefit is now afforded significant weight. Economic benefits such as seal receipts and short-term and long-term economic benefits together are afforded moderate weight. Other elements of the scheme would secure improvements towards bus service as well as to local bus stops, which is a benefit to the local community and is afforded moderate weight. Similarly, introduction of a new pedestrian crossing islands on Eversley Road, new Toucan crossing on Bearwood Road between Coal Lane and Sandy Lane would be suitable for use by pedestrians, cyclists as well as horse riders, and it would improve the attractiveness of this route connecting Arborfield Cross with Wokingham. This would benefit the wider community and as such is afforded moderate positive weight. The provision of public open space and contribution towards healthcare are also recognised as benefits. However, these are afforded only neutral weight as they seek to mitigate the development's own impact or seek to comply with the minimum policy standards. In summary, officers reached the conclusion that these benefits associated with the harm to the valued landscape, character of the area, conflict with spatial strategy, and so forth, that these benefits would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the harms of the development. Apologies, that the harms wouldn't significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. We have now a speaker, Mr. Stevens, who's speaking on behalf of Arborfield and Newland Parish Council. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you. The NPPF's tilted balance test requires equal consideration of economic, social and environmental factors. This proposal clearly fails the environmental test and is therefore not sustainable development. The case officer has noted in the report that the application represents a suboptimal location. Walk-in distances to local facilities are measured via Coal Lane, but improvements to this route may be undeliverable due to environmental concerns. The travel plan is only to be submitted after determination, meaning the measures cited in the officer's report are not guaranteed and therefore should carry little or no weight. Developers frequently apply to vary conditions once outline consent is granted, reducing motivation to honour initial commitments. A proper weighing of harms and benefits isn't possible here due to time constraints, but it is evident that benefits have been overstated and harms underplayed. Measures such as a car share club, e-bike vouchers and minor traffic alterations are insufficient to offset reliance on private vehicles by 70 households. Allowing 3-storey dwellings on rising ground abutting the countryside is inappropriate. The visual impact on users of Coal Lane and Wood Lane would be excessive. The officer's report references an appeal against a previous refusal, No evidence of this exists on the Planning Inspectorate website. Reducing the scheme by 25 units does not address earlier findings that this location is unsuitable. The density of housing proposed significantly exceeds the local housing density. No weight has been given to the report and decision to permanently close School Road to through traffic. This was a condition of the Observer Way planning application to reduce traffic through the Arborfield Conservation Area and create a safer and better environment for walking and cycling. This is particularly relevant as the Coombs Primary School is in such close proximity. The committee is entitled to disagree with officers if it believes issues have been underweighted, material matters omitted, or if it disagrees with the planning judgment. This committee is independent and should not feel pressured to follow officer recommendations. Decisions should be based solely on the merits of the proposal, not speculation about potential appeal outcomes. Predicting appeal results is not a material planning consideration. And the absence of a 5-year land supply engages the tilted balance, but it does not guarantee potential appeals will succeed. Inspectors assess each case individually. I'll just add one little point. Is that my 3 minutes? Well, could I add one point I've just picked up from this report here? Because there's a serious error in this.
There, I have to stick to the 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, there is no medical facility in Arborfield Cross.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Lingwood, please. You have 3 minutes, Mr.
Thank you. Just to pick up, if it wasn't allowed in the time, that the medical facility referred to in the report hasn't been open for a number of years in Arborfield Cross. My name is Reverend Lingwood. I'm here as a local resident of School Road and as a parent of children at the Coombs Primary. 2 issues that I would like to raise with you. First, has been mentioned already about the NPPF insisting that local authorities ensure that planning decisions conserve and enhance biodiversity and must refuse permission if significant harm cannot be avoided or adequately mitigated. As has been already mentioned, badgers protected under the Protection of Badgers Act 1992 have in the last week twice been identified on the development site and photographed. This is a significant and material change that runs contrary to the ecological report in the planning application that states no evidence of badger activity was encountered within the site or the wider survey area. The planning officer's report that she has quoted already acknowledges clear environmental harm caused by this development. The presence of a protected species seen this week increases that level of harm. I urge the committee to allow for a full, proper and thorough reassessment of the site's ecological status and a review of whether the tilted balance is still valid in light of this new evidence this week. Second, there is also the serious issue of safety outside the Coombs Primary School, which is the sole access to the site. The planning officer's report doesn't address in detail the safety concerns and formal objections raised by many residents to the reality that School Road is during school peak hours. Local residents, including parents, teachers, and road users, know that School Road is already a dangerous bottleneck. The parking situation is often chaotic, with parking on double yellow lines, children stepping into the road, and dangerously reduced visibility as a result. This is the lived experience of parents and residents every day, many of whom have formally objected to this development because it's their children's well-being which hasn't been addressed. They are angry. Adding construction traffic and that of 70 new households can only make the situation worse. The NPPF insists that developments must ensure that safe and suitable access can be achieved for all users. I don't believe this report demonstrates a full or realistic appraisal of these risks during school peak hours. A proper on-site high-rise assessment during said hours is essential, I believe, before this application can be responsibly determined with regards to safety at the Coombs Primary School. I therefore urge the committee at least to defer this application on the basis of those 2 findings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lingwood. I would like now to hand over to Mr. Petit on behalf of the agent.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Pettit, Planning Director at Marins and the agent for this application on behalf of my client, Crowdace Homes. I start with a note of thanks to your planning officers who have worked with us positively to bring this application to you with a recommendation for approval. The application follows a previous refusal on a larger site area. Members will note that an appeal has now been submitted to safeguard my client's position ahead of this committee. I'm sure everyone in this room is fully aware of the Council's current position. Indeed, it's been stated tonight. Put simply, we are in a housing crisis. Here in Wokingham, the shortfall is now chronic, with more people than ever unable to find a place they can call home. Before you today is a high-quality development by a family-owned house builder with a track record of working collaboratively with officers. Whilst it might be speculative in nature, I would ask members to focus on what is proposed rather than why it is proposed, so the benefits are fully understood. The application proposes 70 new homes, 40% of which will be affordable. I'd like to make 2 points on this. Firstly, choice. Through public consultation, we heard from local people with ties to Arborfield Cross who are unable to live there due to availability and affordability. In fact, planning records show no significant new homes have been delivered in Arborfield Cross since approximately the 1990s. Consequently, there is very limited choice for local families, people starting out or wanting to move up or down the property ladder. Alongside strategic scale development, we must not lose sight of established local communities and their ability to thrive through choice. Without it, the vitality of the village will be solely reliant on the rotation of the current housing stock. For example, we know the Coombs Primary School is undersubscribed, a trend that could easily continue unless Arborfield Cross is able to provide housing that keeps pace with local population growth and change. We must therefore do better, and we must consider sustainable development proposals properly and carefully. Secondly, affordability. As of December 2024, there are 1,342 households, that's households, not people, on the Council's waiting list. A delivery of 28 affordable homes will not only help in addressing this chronic need, but crucially it will provide the opportunity for these families to become part of and add to the village's community. For those in the room lucky enough to afford your own home, possibly in an area of your choosing, imagine if that wasn't the case. Sadly, we rarely hear from these groups at committee, but arguably they are at the very forefront of the housing crisis, particularly in areas of low affordability, such as the case here. This development will generate in excess of £2.5 million to support local services, with further improvements delivered by the applicant via 278 agreements. These improvements are designed to benefit the local community by delivering key infrastructure. They include service improvements to Cole Lane and a toucan crossing at Coombs Lane, Sandy Lane junction with Bearwood Road, providing a safe route from Arborfield Cross towards Wokingham away from the main roads. Enhanced bus services, complementing the recent Leopard 3 timetable enhancements, improving connections for existing residents and catering for new ones. Enhanced traffic calming on School Road and enhanced traffic calming on Eversley Road.
I have to stop you there, sir.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Last but not least, Joseph. I was worried you're not going to make it, but I'm glad
Yes,
you
I
did.
would like to apologise for my
No.
slightly late arrival. The traffic never.
No, we're
fares
glad
well
you're
in
here.
London.
Thank you, Joseph. Go ahead. 3 minutes, You know.
Thank you. Now, the WBC Planning Department have previously ruled that an acceptable design for a major development could not ever be achieved on this site. Now, this is one of the many reasons as to why I'm slightly at odds as to why officers have recommended this application for approval. Now, on this note, there seems to be quite a number of contradictions with statements that have previously been made on a number of previous applications on this site. One to mention would be that prior applications of not much greater scale have been found to constitute as a coalescence of settlements. So I don't necessarily understand why the planning department think that this application, which in terms of dwelling numbers has barely shrunk, does not. Now, officers have also commented that traffic from this site will not affect the wider highway network. Now, even if we were to completely ignore the fact that this completely contradicts WBC's intentions to divert traffic away from Arborfield Cross, this application risks introducing unacceptable levels of traffic to School Road once again, putting many children once again at risk from traffic, which was another major justification for the closure of the road. Now, if the traffic was acceptable to WBC, then School Road would not have been closed. This recommendation essentially renders both the TRO and the actual planning department's confidence in the highway department's ability to make decisions null and void. This report focuses on the wider network and has left the application's effects on the TRO and the immediate highway network far from adequately addressed. Now, Highways presents us with further issues, as by throwing this development into the worst connected ward in the borough, the application has been littered with flimsy commitments towards things like e-bike vouchers and car clubs that wholly rely on a suitable percentage of uptake from residents to make a genuine difference, and they don't actually take into account the actual behaviours of residents, which would likely render these obligations pointless. And another interesting item of note, which I know has just been mentioned previously, that with so few adequate services available in Arborfield, WBC somehow deem it acceptable to propose contributions to medical facilities through Section 106 agreements in a completely different village rather than the place where it's actually needed. Now, this application's unsuitability is further entrenched in the unacceptable loss of landscape in countryside land, contradiction of both existing and emerging local plan policies, and other 106 obligations that fail to meet an acceptable level of remediation. There's plenty of evidence to suggest here that the drawbacks of this application significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Therefore, I'd like to ask the committee to refuse permission for this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Who wants to start off? Wayne, go ahead.
Considering my last, where you had no objection, this one you have objections. So, as we're just looking at access tonight, how do we square the circle with all the issues that have been mentioned and with School Road, especially the no access closed road? So presumably you're going to reopen it. Well, not you personally, or is it just going to be access only to this development?
Correct, yes, it is access only. The closure is a little further along School Road, closer to Wood Lane. And that traffic regulation order has been made permanent. It was originally put in as an experimental temporary position, now permanent. So that remains closed. So the resultant change on this part of School Road would be the addition of the development and the school traffic. So it would still be around about 10–15% of what it was before the road was closed. So I think that's the point that the applicant has made in their application, that it's still substantially better. And unfortunately, I have to agree.
But you objected?
I objected on the site. Sorry, I identified that have concerns about the site location and its sustainability, and applying the tilted balance that has featured, as you've already heard, in that combination. I can probably anticipate some other questions, but perhaps I'll
you're not alone. You weren't the only people who objected, which is quite unusual. You know, especially for highways. I can't remember the last time highways objected, so it must have been serious. Planning, growth and delivery didn't like it, landscape didn't like it, so you weren't alone, so don't feel special.
For my clarification,
that's enough at the moment.
Wayne, just for my clarification, so Highways did not object against traffic and access, it objected against what had concerns about the suboptimal location in terms of sustainability. Yeah. Okay.
And as I said, it's very unusual for Highways to object. So as they have objected, it should be quite a considerable situation. How many times have you seen Highways object to anything here?
With sustainable
I can't
locations?
Remember. It doesn't matter whether it's sustainable or not. They have objected.
Yeah. Catherine.
Well, I was just going to pick up on the traffic thing since we're on it. Has anyone considered moving the bollards that divide School Road so that the access to this would be via the other end?
I suppose the simple answer is no, the application is what's been presented to us. I think one of the things that seems to be missed amongst the community, and I entirely understand them wanting to defend that fear of the unknown and or change, that clearly a development being added back in would increase traffic on that section of road, as I've already answered to Councillor Smith, that the cumulative residual effect, as is the policy test that is left to us, ultimately there is a degree of betterment that is already been established. Yes, the proposals weaken that, but that forms part of the mix. I think one of the things, again, picking up on the point outside the Coombs School, is that the remaining traffic calming measures that are in place, they are less effective because the traffic flows are now substantially lower, and the proposals seek to modify those traffic calming features so that they are now more effective, and the resultant residual effect is that there's a balance in the overall position that what level of harm is resulting from the development is offset by those slight improvements.
Caroline.
Thank you. This originally was not put into the local plan, so what significant difference has it made that it's suitable for building on now? Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. The site has been assessed as part of the local plan update, as part of the several other sites combined. And it was considered that due to the proximity to services and facilities, it was not sustainable, but there were also other aspects of it, such as the landscape impacts also. It was a very high level assessment, which is not like the more detailed assessment that we do when an application is put forward. So there have been changes since the local plan assessment or the HELA assessment has taken place. For example, I'm not sure if Alan will want to jump in terms of the sustainability, but there has been improvements to bus transport now, increased frequency of bus service. There is anything else, Alan? That's it. Okay, all right. So there have been changes which are not my area of specialism. So does this answer to your question in terms of the sustainability? And obviously the site itself now proposes additional improvements to access the limited but existing services within the Arborfield Cross Village, such as the pedestrian crossing islands, which would allow residents from the eastern side of the Eversley Road to more safely cross to the western side, as well as the improvements to the cycling and walking environment towards Wokingham, which obviously would not have been contemplated at the time of the HELA assessment of the local plan. So that's not something that was put forward then. But the Toucan crossing across Bearwood Road, which is part of the infrastructure package, is also recognised and contributing to the sustainable travel options.
Yes, to help expand and clarify, as Joanna has just indicated, that there have been a number of things that have been emerging and or changing, material considerations starting to arise, and they have been in that transitional period since the HELA was first completed. So from a walking perspective, generally speaking, accessibility on foot is greatest to schools and or shops. And obviously in this case, they are both very close in terms of that provision. In terms of public transport, the bus service improvement plan has introduced an additional bus service to the route, and that's been funded in the short term with the intention that further development would support and sustain the viability of that in the future. As Joanna was just indicating, there are additional crossing provisions to get to and from the bus stops that have been proposed and agreed. And alongside those, the public right-of-way improvement plan and the local cycle walking infrastructure plan have both been advanced. The public right-of-way plan includes an improvement to Route B, which is Cole Lane, and that was intended to connect through to Woos Hill. As part of the local cycle walking infrastructure plan, there have been a review of that route to consider the option of connecting Coombs Lane with Sandy Lane, and from that onward connections to Molly Miller's Lane with the Blair Grave Lane site that has since been consented. So in terms of assembling those improvements to accessibility, with the emerging proposals for Barkham Square, which are obviously in the local plan, and the proposals at Loddon Garden Village, there are greater potentials for connections to further accessibility, which again I appreciate. You know, the community are under attack from multiple angles. The idea is that we are trying to assemble together as many things as possible to achieve the right level of accessibility, but a proportionate scale of development, which your officers have put forward from a planning perspective, in that tilted balance.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I just ask about, you mentioned future funding for the bus from developments.
Yes.
So you're expecting a lot more development, so will there be funding? Because you said it was going to be a short term.
Yes, sorry. From the Community Infrastructure Levy, there's sufficient funding from current commitments to fund the enhanced bus service for 18 months, which started earlier this year. The proposals at Blair Grove Lane that have been since allowed on appeal would also bring forward additional funding towards that bus service, and this site would complement that too. I think between the three on this particular corridor, that would ensure that the viability of those services as they are now operating would become commercially viable, and therefore, again, under the tilted balance, we believe that an appropriate balance has been struck. But that does not dismiss the fact that the site itself, in its current form, is in an unsustainable location. But in terms of applying the tilted balance and the opportunities to improve sustainable travel have been identified, have been taken up, and they form part of the planning obligations before you that would be delivered as part of either planning conditions or legal agreements.
Thank you.
Okay.
Moses, go ahead.
Okay. Apart from the reduction in the number of homes, what is one material difference between the application that were refused and this one that are now tilted the balance in favor of approval?
Thank you, Moses. There are several differences between this application and the previously refused scheme. For example, one of the previous reasons for refusal stated that the site would result in the coalescence of settlements that was considered to apply to Arborfield Cross and Langley Common, as well as the Arborfield Cross and Barkham Hill to the north. Now, with the removal of the eastern field, that coalescence concerns no longer arise, and this has been confirmed by our landscape officer, who doesn't also consider there would be visual coalescence, therefore that reason for refusal, for example, falls away. There has another reason for refusal was impact on heritage assets, which is the Langley Pond House, again, which was in close proximity to the eastern field. And with the eastern field now removed from the proposal, there is no longer a heritage impact, therefore this reason for refusal falls away or cannot be, doesn't follow through to this application. There were, I mean, I should probably say from the outset that we are assessing the applications on its own merits, but just to answer your question, when comparing it with the previous one, there are a few more differences. The previous illustrative master plan showed that the gardens would be substandard in terms of the standards in the Borough Design Guide. The separation distances with between dwellings were also not met in accordance with our guidance, and the current proposal no longer has those issues within the illustrative master plan shown. So this reason for refusal would no longer apply to this scheme. There are several more that should be pointed out here, perhaps. The previous application was not supported by various documentation that now has been provided. And for example, previously biodiversity net gain baseline could not be agreed or wasn't agreed, so that formed a reason for refusal, and that's no longer the case here, as the BNG baseline is now agreed. The previous application hasn't demonstrated that the proposal wouldn't have an acceptable impact on protected species and species of principal importance. And the current application now addresses this issue. There were also issues in terms of the transport assessment submitted previously that have now been resolved in respect of this proposal. The same also applies to pumping station and the viability of the drainage scheme, so that's also been resolved. As well as the sustainability credentials and the carbon reductions, which previously formed the reason for refusal, which no longer stands as information has been submitted. So there are quite a few differences, and I hope that sort of clarifies a bit more. Okay, thank you.
Catherine. Oh, Brian, go ahead.
Could I just add a point there for members' benefit? Whilst the refuse scheme is identified in the committee report and members have made reference to it, it's important to bear in mind that that scheme and that decision to refuse has not at this time been tested at appeal. And whilst it's refused, it doesn't have the backing of the planning inspectorate to the council's decision at this time. So whilst the council have refused the application for the reasons outlined by Joanna just then, those reasons, whether they're agreed or disagreed, have not been tested at an appeal as yet.
Thank you, Brian. Catherine, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask about Swallowfield Medical Practice and this contribution. And did you find out whether they were prepared to reopen their surgery there?
Yes. So this is part of the works that the ICB, our consultee on the NHS matters, the comments that they've provided was to identify how the increase in floor space could be achieved, and that pre-project work would need to take place yet. Whether it would be at the Alberfield Cross Surgery or another branch that is operated by Swallowfield Medical Practice, and Swallowfield Medical Practice operates branches also at Swallowfield as well as Shinfield, so there are several options potentially to consider.
Any more questions? Maybe we can go through some of the key parts and maybe just see if everybody sort of agrees or disagrees with those ones. We have the principle of development. This proposal, obviously, as is demonstrated, conflicts with the spatial strategy policies, as it outside settlement boundaries and exceeds the scale appropriate for Arborfield Cross as a limited development location. But I also want to note that some of the recent appeals, I just want to make aware that I've seen that inspectors have asked the application of spatial strategy needs to be applied in a flexible way to ensure that sufficient land for housing continues to come forward. Then there is the settlement separation. It is considered that the proposal would not lead to physical and visual coalescence with nearby settlements. Is everybody aligned with that one? Stuart, you were looking a little bit concerned about that one. Go ahead.
If you're going to ask us as you go along, perhaps you should go back to your first one and get consensus.
Yeah. What's our thoughts on this one? I think the officer has given it significant weight. Do we agree with that one?
I think that, you know, if Joanna had a 5-year land supply, we wouldn't be here tonight. So the only reason we're here tonight is because we've got a 1.7-year land supply. Because it was only refused in December. And I understand, Joanna, what you've said about the changes. So I don't think any of us could agree that that site is sustainable on a weighing scale. But we've been here before, haven't we? Yes. Yeah. So I think it's
that
one
is
of
my.
those.
I share your concerns. I mean, this is, you know, we have refused things on principle of development, but we're in the tilted balance case, and then I've seen appeals where they have said that recognizing that it is not meeting the principle of development, but that inspectors are applying this on a flexible way, which is a concern to me. But yeah,
we had hoped that we would have had the first examination in public of our local plan by now, pre-summer. Well, we know that's not going to happen now because you've got to give 6 weeks' notice, so we probably won't see that until September. Had that have happened, there might have been some emerging thoughts that would come out of that, because the principal development is in this neck of the woods. So you can understand why residents are very concerned, upset, blah, blah, blah.
and I share your frustration. We voted for the local plan a year ago, and you know, it takes for me a very long time for that to get approved. But we've been there before with the principle of development. So, what is our thoughts on that one, Carol?
Thank you. Yes, we are where we are. As Wayne said, I think in the perfect world, we just look at an application and decide on the pros and cons without that pressure from the outside of having to deliver the housing. I think the danger of going through bit by bit is that the tilted balance looks at the whole thing. It looks at a balance, so there's the bad and there's the good, and then looking at whether there's, you know, outweighing of one or the other. So, in that sense, I think it's probably we need to look at the whole thing and decide from there. Because even if we said yes and no all the way through, at the end of the day, we've got to, you know, sum that up. And it is just about access at the moment. I don't like this application, but we are between the rock and a hard place.
But, you know, on the positive side, yeah, I mean, which I know at appeals this is given a lot of weight, and they split them in two. You have the number of houses, so we are on a housing crisis. This provides 70 dwellings, and we know that in our borough there's a high demand for housing in this area, and we have currently a lack of available land to which to build the houses on. It also, which is normally given a very high rate. Then they separate out the affordable homes, so 40% of affordable homes. And there is a real problem with affordability in the borough, and there's a persistent unmet demand of those unable to afford housing on the open market. So this also addresses critical housing needs and affordable housing needs. So those are two ones that are a big benefit that will carry a significant weight. And then you have some other parts, you know, the biodiversity, which adds some, but for me, those two carry the big weights, and then you have to balance it. Yeah, go ahead, Moses.
Just trying to get clarification. The previous applications, I know Brown says they've not been tested. Surely they also had affordable homes in them. So, like Wayne says, we are here because of the lack of 5-year land supply, because nothing has really changed, because before we had more homes. So they had 95 before, so that those applications will be more favorable than where we are now, if we're talking about economic benefits.
I suppose it's a bit, no, I think I see it slightly differently. The other one was twice the size of it. Yeah. The Wokingham Borough Council has rejected that one. It hasn't been tested, but it has been rejected. This is a smaller scale, albeit still significant amount of housing, but on a smaller field. That sometimes offsets some of these bigger issues. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So, Moses, just in response, yes, you're right. The larger application hasn't been tested, but therefore officers cannot, other than the recommendation presented, the decision presented, officers cannot confirm to you that will be upheld by an inspector at appeal. It's too early to say, but there are distinct spatial and technical differences and deficiencies with that application. Now, it is a balance, and it's not a 50-50 balance as identified in the report. If it was 50%, 50% weighed equally, it would fall in favour because the balance is tilted. In the case of the earlier application, the harm was deemed by officers to significantly demonstrably outweigh the benefits. In this case, it is incredibly finely balanced. That should have come across in quite a detailed report presented to you. And even if it wasn't 50-50, but maybe slightly greater harm than the benefits, would those would that harm significantly and demonstrably outweigh? The answer is, in officers' view, no. So again, giving weight to the various social, economic and environmental factors, the committee needs to come to a decision based on the information in front of them. The factors discussed, Councillor Smith talked about sustainability of location at the beginning. That is not an unusual scenario for the committee to be presented with. We haven't been presented with a sustainably located greenfield speculative scheme on the edge of settlement for a very long time. And they have all gone through the appeals process where, as Martin has set out, the inspector has acknowledged and recognised it may not be the most sustainable location as we understand here, but is it unlivable? Is it isolated? Is it undesirable? Is it even practical to walk to a shop? In this report, it indicates it is practical. There are bus stops. It's not isolated. Arborfield Cross is a equally desirable and livable place for the existing residents to live, for children to access the school next to this site. If committee ignores or underplays those facilities and that level of connectedness, then we will have trouble at appeal again. I don't know the outcome, but the facts are in front of you, and we need to obviously look at how this site relates to other houses, 2-minute walk past the school on the left, which are equally on the edge of a village. They're not sustainable in themselves. Again, the bar an inspector would use may be very different from a bar we are describing around this table. Likewise, the LPU, its status, it's afforded limited weight at this stage. The spatial strategy, the allocation of sites within the LPU is one of the primary sources of objection, which will be discussed at length at the examination in public. The question earlier, Caroline, about this being not allocated, the HELA was undertaken in 2021. It's already been covered that that was a long time ago. And obviously if the current LPU and its site allocations are not accepted by the inspectorate, there will be a review of what sites should or should not be included. And as Alan has said, in terms of transport highway improvements, things have moved on in almost 5 years since the HELA was undertaken. So again, we are presented with this in front of us. It's not, doesn't disengage our ability to consider what's in front of us. Thank you, Chair.
Wayne, go ahead.
I mean, it must be difficult for residents because we've gone through the process, spatial strategy. This isn't the first and it won't be the last. And I look back at Blackgrove Lane, I look back at Riverways Farm, and And all of those sites that I've just mentioned were objected to by this planning committee and they were refused on the night. Now they've been approved. And we know why. We haven't got a plan and we haven't got a 5-year land supply. Although I don't see these people building all these houses that we've approved over the last 3 years, you know, because they're just not. So we're building up a massive bottleneck and a glut of housing. So I wonder if the local plan does get through, if all of those houses in that local plan will actually ever get built. But it is a difficult situation that we are put in yet again with an application that fundamentally goes against, you know, what we've been brought up with in terms of policy. It's very difficult. It's certainly very difficult for me, having been the author of the previous local plan, and if we had got it through 3 years ago, we wouldn't be here tonight. So you can understand why I get frustrated when we get these kind of applications, these speculative applications come through. But there you go, that's it, water on the bridge. People take their votes and the rest is history. So we're in a very difficult position, but again, I mean, I know we should not look at an application and think, well, what if we refuse it tonight and it goes to appeal? We don't know. The problem we've got, if we did refuse it tonight and we go to appeal, you wouldn't have the benefits of having Joanna fighting against it, because it would have to go out and you would get one of these consultants that the council uses, and they're quite frankly, they're not up to it, and they're not good enough when you're fighting against brilliant barristers on the other side. It just, you know, and we've experienced that on several occasions. So we are in a rock and a hard place on this.
And I'm the same. Yeah, this is, you know, this site has all the things that, you know, it looks. No, we had a site visit there. It's a beautiful place. Yeah, it's the only thing. It's quite enclosed in a way, so it has that hedge. So it's maybe the visual one is localized, but it's a beautiful green field. You know, it is a significant amount of housing for a small settlement as Arborfield. It doesn't jive, but I have now been seeing enough of these appeals alongside, including Trouts Lane, including, you know, there's another one which is not that different from this one, where we had used the same arguments, which were then thrown back at us and saying like, oh, it goes against the spatial strategy, but then if you cannot demonstrate we have enough land, and we can't demonstrate we have enough land, then you need to be flexible with that one. Sustainability, the tension between, you know, our Wokingham policy aspirations and rural housing deliveries I've seen at appeals to saying that they have accepted that perfect sustainability, which we would like, is unachievable in most rural locations, while the housing needs remain pressing. And all those sort of things that we have used in the past have have not tilted the balance significantly for appeals or to be tested. And that is my problem. I can see this case, I can see the big benefits, which are 70 houses, and I know people don't see it, but I mean, if there aren't enough affordable houses, it affects people in many ways, yeah? It impacts their financial situation, their physical, their mental health, their ability to improve their lives, and as well as children, you know, how well they do at school and grow up. So we have a housing crisis. We cannot demonstrate enough land. Yeah, and that benefit should not be ignored, that other people can't have houses and can't find affordable houses. There's a need for it. But this doesn't mean that this site is a great site. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think we all agree that this isn't ideal by any means, but I think everybody's looked at and discussed the issues, the problems, and recognise that we can't solve them, that we're faced with outside influences, if you like. And I was on this planning committee back in 1984, and yes, it was a very different kettle of fish then. You could make observations, and in the main, you could turn down something if you thought it was not very good. But we've got these rules now, and I think we'll agree that we have looked at each of the areas of concern. And unless anybody's got any questions, I wonder if I could suggest that I could propose that we very, very regrettably accept the officer's recommendation of conditional approval, if there's a seconder.
Catherine?
I will just say this because you mentioned Trowes Lane. I'm very, very familiar with Trowes Lane, even though I wasn't on the planning committee at the time. And quite honestly, although I think this is beautiful, you know, the valued landscape aspect of it breaks my heart. But from the sustainability point of view, it is vastly more sustainable than Trowes Lane. And Trowes Lane went through on appeal. I mean, this has got a school. It's got 3 buses an hour. I mean, you know, those things alone make it, and it's nearer to Wokingham and Reading than Trowes Lane is. I mean, quite honestly, you know, when you start looking at, you start ranking them.
I wouldn't disagree.
Really? No. Oh, you wouldn't disagree with me?
But that doesn't mean that this makes.
I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't make it
but
good.
I think you need to keep that in mind, because you need to judge it against it, and how others, how our decisions get judged against it. Yeah, I agree with it. This is not the best location, but I mean, this is a rural development. You're not going to get perfect sustainability issues, but that doesn't mean that the concerns from the residents are not there. But also, I think the residents need to be aware that we recognize their concerns, but we also have this other part that we are short of houses, we are short of land to demonstrate land supply, and there are people who don't have houses, who, you know, their lives are also impacted, and that is the balance and the unfairness. And at the moment, the way we are, and also from policy, is that part weighs very significantly. Okay, is there a, Carol has motion, is there a seconder for this motion? Caroline, thank you. Can I have a vote for this one? Oh. Vote for those in favor, please. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, so that's everybody. Sam is... Sam and Moses. Anybody against or abstain?
Abstain.
Abstaining. Sam and Moses are abstaining. Thank you. Thank you all. We need a break before the last one, or are we ready to push on?
Can we have a quick break?
Quick break, yes. Anybody? Moses, I'll keep an eye on you. If you need a break...
What's the time? What's the duration of the break?
I will not start until everybody is back. So let me just... How much, if you... shall I give 5 minutes break? But I will... Let's make sure everybody is back. Let me make sure everybody is back on time. Okay. Can we start again? We go now for our last one, which is the land at Stanlake House in Ruscombe Park, which is, I know where that is, but I'll give Ben to give the word. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening all. This is application 241350 to land at Stanlake House in Ruscombe Business Park within Ruscombe. This is a full planning application for the proposed erection of 12 residential apartments in 2 blocks, A and B, with associated servicing and landscaping. The site itself is shown on the figure on the screen, is located directly within the modest development location of Ruscombe, is within settlement limits. The principle of development is acceptable. The site itself is partially, but in the vast majority, previously developed land. And it formed originally part of a informal amenity area linked with Stanlake House. Now, this ceased essentially when the office use ceased, because Stanlake House, which is directly adjacent to the application site, that was converted to residential under prior approval. This has now become a slightly redundant, although partially maintained, smoking area, informally and not directly linked to any development whatsoever. It's sat there, it is redundant, and this application proposes to utilise it in line with the spirit of the framework and the MPPG in using the land efficiently to provide towards our housing needs. Turning to the views from outside of the site, is incredibly well screened along Ruscombe Lane. In fact, the site itself is not visible from Ruscombe Lane. There is a very high quality hedgerow which will be maintained in full, and the site itself will be accessed through the existing access of Ruscombe Business Park, and this will not change in the slightest. Again, the site itself, it is in the vast majority a disused amenity space and a car park, which is being used and rented privately by the owners of the site at current. So those members that came along to the site visit, they may have spotted some cars were parked in the proposed spaces because these are being reused. Now, these are simply due to private agreements that the current landowner has with people storing their vehicles. Not daily drivers. There's an ambulance there from 1950, which wouldn't be the most comfortable daily driver for those commuting into London. So there's no issues there that this development would lead to on-street parking. Turning to the development itself, and we can start with parking as we're on that subject. 22 spaces are proposed, which is actually in significant excess of the borough requirement as expressed within Appendix 2 of the MDD local plan. Now, what is required to make the development acceptable was 12 spaces, which is on an allocated basis, so 1 per unit, 3 visitor spaces, and 2 unallocated. So the total is exceeded significantly, which is what has been put forward, with the excessive parking spaces left there when capacity dictates they're required. The building will be comprising of 2 blocks, so Block A, which is your larger block, and Block B, which is your smaller block. Now, these are a mixture of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, which are very far and few between, in Ruscombe itself. So it supports what is quite directly a local need. The development is accompanied with amenity space, both communal and private, meaning balconies are afforded to absolutely every unit, small private gardens for those on the ground floor, with blue infrastructure proposed as well to manage surface water. Nothing exists of this type on the site, so actually this will act as a betterment for the drainage situation, given there is a minor risk north of the site of surface water risk. However, this does not impact the developable area of the site itself, it's just a knock-on benefit. And before we move on, it's important just to note the landscape provision on site are current. To be entirely transparent, 2 TPO trees, which were unfortunately listed throughout the process of the application. Those are poor quality trees that were grouped within Group G12, which is the tree protection order. Now, the Trees and Landscape team grouped these together essentially because of their cumulative benefits. However, the trees themselves are not particularly high quality, as identified in the applicant's submitted arboricultural impact assessment. And finally, on site, a 41%, 0.77, biodiversity net gain will occur on site. This is over 4 times the statutory requirement, and considering the site comprised in the vast majority of a car park, this is indeed a benefit. Turning towards the elevational form itself, these are of contemporary appearance. They are 10.9 metres in height. Now, this blurs the transition between the very large buildings of Stanlake House and then the residential form of Ruscombe Lane. It is clearly delineated by the hedgerow and Ruscombe Lane itself, so it's a logical height and it's a logical place to have built form. The design itself is inspired by the Ruscombe Design Guide, using its design code and typology. So that's a mixture of some of the red brick you'll see in Block 2, and these are early elevations here. The mixture of render, pitch roofs, etc. Because an apartment is never going to look like a family dwelling, simple as. However, they have done their absolute best with help of their architect to design something which is locally appropriate for the Ruscombe Business Park, locally appropriate for Ruscombe Lane, and again, creates the perfect marriage of the two. And the same can be said with what is proposed for Block B. Quickly progressing on to floor plans, every single unit complies with the NDSS, so the minimum space standards, and actually 11 of the 12 apartments are in significant excess of this. So that's your 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. As mentioned, every single apartment has its own amenity space, and these are not bolt-on balconies, these are integrated balconies into the design. Some indicative CGIs are shown here as to what the development could look like. So this is the view from the existing access road, which again is not changing in the slightest. And this is tucked into the site. So this view, and in fact, maybe only the tops of the roofs will be visible from Ruscombe Lane, and all visual appreciation of the site would fall within the site. Turning to views within the site, the form is successfully broken up, which is often a problem with big apartments because they are big pieces of built form. Now, through the use of a mixture of locally appropriate cladding, mixture of red brick, well-composed fenestration, it breaks up the form successfully to create something which is not so block-shaped, which we generally associate with residential apartments. And as such, whilst the proposal indeed would comply with the development plan as a whole, with a flat balance, whilst the proposal does indeed comply with provisions of the LPU, albeit afforded limited weight at this time, the tilted balance is engaged, which is yet another matter which weighs in favour of the application. And thus, with this in mind, the officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission, subject to the conditions and informatives listed within Appendix 1 of the committee report, the completion of an associated Section 106 legal agreement, and those heads of terms are listed within the recommendation, or alternatively, to authorise refusal of permission in the event that the Section 106 legal agreement is not signed within a 6-month period or within an extension agreed, delegated to officers on behalf of the Head of Development Management. Thank you very, very much for listening.
Thank you, Ben. Open to questions. Sam, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. No, I think this is a positive development. I think I know the area very well. I think, you know, having looked at the site, you know, and been past a number of times, I think, you know, the development looks as a positive development. I think looking at, you know, the fact that it's, you know, 1, 2, 3 bed apartments, I think this is a much needed type of sort of development in the area. It's a walking distance from Twyford Station, much needed in the area. So I'm for this.
Thank you, Sam. I concur with that one. Also, it is on a sort of part of a business park. So we're not looking at a green field that is undeveloped in this case.
Well, and the precedent has already been set because you've got Spitfire House and you've got Millgate House. So.
Not Millgate House, but Stanlake House, but yeah, the Spitfire House. Yeah, that's definitely there. I had a question about affordability. So there's no affordable housing part of this one, but there's a contribution, is that right?
Quite a modest contribution, again, to be completely transparent. Viability is very much a curse with these smaller sites, particularly on previously developed land. This costs significant sums of money to remediate. There's hard surfacing. This formerly was a core employment area. So, in fact, part of it still is. So in this respect, small developers, they are able to use a viability mechanism to, as we all unfortunately know by now, to essentially rule what they can provide. And on this basis, it was just over £26,000, which we can agree is incredibly modest. It is indeed better than nothing. We can agree that as well. But no, Chair, nothing on site.
I think we're going to see this more and more and more. So we all sit here thinking we're going to get 40% affordable. I think those days are gone. I think genuinely, you know, we're seeing more and more coming through the system. Developers are going open book, and they can make 20% under the rules of the NPPF, as you know, the viability argument. So I think we're going to start to see that, just like we see speculative developments. I think we're going to see more, especially on brownfield sites. Yeah.
I had one question. Trees. There were some issues from trees and landscape with objections to trees. Can you enlighten us a bit on that one?
Absolutely. So, so technically speaking, whilst the site itself, it does form a business park and it does form a car park, a line is drawn around this within our landscape character area assessment, which outlines that it does form part of a landscape character area. Now, the proposal, it does result in the loss of 2 TPO trees, and that is a disbenefit of the scheme, which has been acknowledged within the officer report. It further results in the very, very partial encroachment between 11 and 15% of 5 separate trees also. No dig foundations are proposed for any works within this. However, a trees and landscape officer's job is to protect trees and landscape, and the proposal, albeit when we measure this on the planning balance, it's an absolute clear and unambiguous recommendation. It is a matter which a trees and landscape professional rightly would professionally attempt to defend.
Any other questions for this one? Could we have maybe someone proposing? Oh, Sam, go ahead. You proposal to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Sam. Could we have a seconder? Catherine, thank you. Could we have a vote for this one? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to note for the committee members that there is an update on at the end of the sheet about our major appeals update, but I think you've seen it, and unless there's questions for Brian, I think. No more questions? Then we finish the meeting. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.